if you got 10,000 reviews, then presumably you've sold considerably more than 10. How many copies do you reckon you've sold of that in total?
I
Or
think I've sold about 250,000.
yes, I mean, that's pretty damn good, to be honest.
That's a lot of white elephants and stocking fillers.
And we're live, and it's hot here in the UK, and we have the amazing Janice Papworth, who is down in the lovely area of Devon, isn't it? You're based in the UK?
Yep, sunny East Devon.
Yeah. And you are another one of the lovely author people that I occasionally meet up, both in Las Vegas and at the London Self-Publishing Show, or whatever it was called in London. And you were happy to come on your show, but you wanted to be different. You wanted to talk about self-publishing as a person who's not trying to sell a self-publishing course and has actually self-published books. So I know we can see them in the background, but start off by saying a little bit how you got into self-publishing books and what kind of books do you produce?
Well, I got into it in a circuitous route. I don't produce standard novels. I produce more trivia books and puzzle books, fun sort of gag gifts that you would pop into someone's Christmas stocking or use as a white elephant gift. And the way I got into it was that I started a blog,
Yeah.
and then I found out that the easiest thing to sell anyone was a t-shirt. So I started doing t-shirts for people who came to the blog. It was a blog about railways. My husband wrote the content because he knows everything about railways.
Yeah.
But I was doing the rest of it. So putting it up onto the website and doing the Facebook. And then he kept not coming up with a blog. So I thought, well, maybe I'll be better off just do it on Facebook and sell people t-shirts. And Amazon have a t-shirt business called Merch on Demand, where you can upload t-shirt designs and then they'll print them and ship them. And then I discovered through that they also had a book department in the same vein, where you can upload your books, your PDFs, and they will print them and ship them. And they pay you royalties.
Yeah. So it's funny because normally the story I hear when I've talked to authors, I've talked to a lot of authors over the years, as I kind of mentioned, I used to have a Begin Self-Publishing podcast. Normally the story is it's somebody decided to write a book and then how on earth do we publish it? It usually is a fiction work or like romantic fiction. But you came from more of you were interested on online business kind of stuff. And then you found, oh, there's a way I can make money from writing books. So after you discovered it was presumably KDP that you first used, Kindle Direct Publishing. So you were clearly not somebody who had this great book idea. You wanted to write about South American politics in the 1800s or something like that. So how did you work out what kind of books to write? I mean, you've got these sort of stocking filler kind of puzzle trivia and other books. So how did you end up on that? Was this like you did some market analysis or something, or was this just something you liked doing? What was the
Um,
rationale approach
I'm
there?
very business minded, and I'm not creative in the way that traditional authors are creative. So I did look at what was selling on Amazon and what was working. And the other thing is, I hit on the stocking filler idea because I've got two well, children. They're grown up now,
Yeah,
and the tricky one, he's got allergies. So the problem at Christmas was always what to get him
yeah,
and what was small, because once you get to a certain age, Father Christmas doesn't fill your Christmas stockings anymore,
yeah,
and your mum has to do it. So you can't give him food items, you can't give him toiletries. And so, what do you put in a Christmas stocking? And you put a book. So I created the first book really with all its little fart jokes and things to be something that he would enjoy and he would like to find in his Christmas stocking. But
yeah.
I definitely came at it from a business point of view of what was selling on Amazon, and that's how I approach all my books really.
And would you say that the books are the main part of your income from your kind of online business now, or do you still make money from the merch side? Like,
I
how's that
do
all
make
work?
some money from the merch side, but most of my income is from the books because when we get to Christmas, the books go nuts.
Yeah. Okay. So let's say somebody's watching this and I mean, obviously, I don't think you're not creative. I think this is one of these like, oh, well, I'm not creative. I used to years ago. Well, actually, I've never thought I'm not creative, but most of the people who say they're not creative actually are creative. But let's say there's somebody out there who is not creative, but they can follow instructions and they can do it. What would you? And they were interested in trying to make money from books. What would be your instructions to them in terms of a non-creative person? If you're like, you don't have to write a wonderful work of fiction. You can just what kind of
Well, even
um,
people that have written wonderful works of
yeah,
fiction, because I found that when I came to sell my books, there was very few people who were doing what I was doing and talking about it and explaining how to sell them and how to market them. So I got involved with the traditional book publishers, people who were self-publishing fiction books. And I did discover that there was this thing called vanity publishing, which I knew nothing
yeah,
about. And basically, I hope I've got this right, but it's where people pay somebody £1,000, they
yeah,
give them 100 copies of their book, and they've got to sell them themselves. And I think sometimes it's called hybrid publishing. And I was quite upset by this because I felt they were being ripped off. It's fine if they wanted those 100 books, so they could give them out to family and friends or get the family and friends to pay for them, maybe to help cover their costs. But if they were trying to get into proper self publishing, they could do it all through Amazon and they didn't have to pay for it. And I didn't want people to pay for books, pay for printing their books when they didn't need to. And that's why I wanted to come and talk about that, because I don't like the thought of people being ripped off. Now, I have discovered I've got a little East Devon author group with a proper author friend who writes proper books. That some people do want to do it that way. They do want to, where they're pretty much paying a publisher to print their books rather than a proper publisher. But they want to do it that way because that's all they want. They just want 20 books to hand out to family and friends, job done. But if you're coming at it from a business point of view, paying a
yeah.
vanity publisher or a hybrid publisher is not a good way to go about it.
Well, I mean, I'd agree in some ways, but I would say that there are options out there. There are companies I know of that do a good job of helping people to self-publish their books. But I think the problem with vanity publishers in general is that they they play on ignorance. They play on ignorance of the people, and there are some authors who are very much they want to be chosen, and to them, self-publishing sounds like they're kind of like they've not been selected properly by hand. And I think vanity publishers can. I think ultimately there are some hybrid publishers who give good value, but in a way you've got to understand self-publishing to know that they give you good value, and they're not just going to give you 20 books badly printed that they've created on Amazon for free. I think that's the big problem with vanity. So let's say that somebody is interested in creating a book. Like, how does that process work? Like forget the fact that I've self-published books and you self-published books. We've got somebody who's watches, and maybe they've got like some funny list of jokes they've written in, like 50 pages of jokes or something that they've written themselves, and that's actually in itself quite funny. And they want to make that available as a book. How would they do that? What is the basics of self-publishing?
So you can format it yourself in Canva. That's what I do with a lot of mine, and download the PDF and upload it to Amazon. I mean, you may have to pay a cover designer,
Yeah,
I would say, and you may have to get it into the right format if you want to do it as a Kindle book, as an ebook. But there's so many YouTube videos that can help you get started. You can actually start for free. I think the cover is probably the one thing you'll pay for in that case, unless you've got good design skills or a family member that can help you out with that. Because the cover really is what sells the book, and it's got
yeah,
to look good when people scroll through the feed. But the formatting and getting it right and getting it uploaded to Amazon, there's YouTube videos that you can watch that will help you. And what I did to get started, I found people that I trusted on YouTube and I absorbed their content while I was doing other things around the house or driving
yeah,
somewhere. I would listen to them. You don't have to watch them on YouTube necessarily to to absorb the information and listen to them. So I'd be shoveling washing in the machine, but listening to what they were saying, or I'd be getting dressed and listening to them. So it's about learning. If you're prepared to learn, I think you do have to be prepared to learn. And it's not just about the book itself, is it? It's about the marketing side, because
Yeah.
once you've created your book, it's like putting a seed in the ground. You've got to water it. You can't just keep putting seeds in the ground and not watering any of them. Otherwise, none of them are going to grow. And some of them won't grow at all, even then, and some of them will. So that's how I see it, really.
Okay. So they can upload this. Well, Canva is like quite a simple sort of graphic design, and it's free. I think it's a graphic design website.
Yeah. Unless you want to use some of the pro features, there's a few. But
Yeah,
you can start off for free, see how you get on with it.
yeah, and it's like £10 a month. It's not expensive, is it? So,
No.
well, not stupidly expensive. I mean, I suppose everything's expensive to somebody, but in the Commonwealth. Okay, so then you come on to the real crux of the issue, which I think 90% of authors have problems with, which is they've got this book available on Amazon and it's not selling any copies. How can they put the word out there? How can they get people to actually buy the books? What techniques have worked for you?
Well, Amazon advertising works for me the best, but it's no good paying for adverts if your book's no good. So
Yeah,
really, you need to get some peer reviews, and we all make rubbish books to begin with, and we think they're great
yeah,
until a few months down the line, and then you look back and think, oh no, that wasn't quite the best one. And you can try promoting on your own social media pages. If you get sucked into social media, then I would say stick with one platform, because you cannot do it all. You
yeah,
cannot. I mean, people have had success with TikTok. And the good thing about TikTok is you don't need a lot of followers in order to gain traction, whereas the other social media websites you do. So that's another option.
Okay, and there's another question I often see asked: does an author actually need a website of their own, or can they just push people to Amazon or all platforms?
I didn't start with a website at
Yeah,
all. Um, I don't think the website makes me a lot of money, but Amazon does make me a lot of money, because Amazon has a hell of a lot of traffic coming to it, and Amazon knows how to promote your book. So, for example, if your book is selling well, supposing you make a book about fishing
mm,
and you start selling, when people buy fishing reels, they buy your book. Then Amazon starts suggesting to people who are buying fishing reels, they might like your book as well. So you can do things like that. You can pick hobbies and make books around them. I often find what's useful is watching our local news. So our local news, we don't have a lot of crime in East Devon, thankfully.
lucky you.
So they've
Yeah,
got to fill the news with something. So they fill it about, cross-channel swimmers and people who've got weird hobbies, and then I think, oh, perhaps they'd quite like a book to go along with that.
yeah. So let's talk about Amazon advertising, because there's probably some people who are like, well, what is Amazon advertising? I mean, like, how would an author, given that they've signed up to the KDP platform, and I think there's another tab on it which is like advertising, how does Amazon advertising work, and
Oh,
when should somebody think about using that?
so that is a whole big ball game that you have to learn, and you
Yeah,
have to do it yourself, because only you know your books, and the only way to learn it is by getting advice and then trying it to see what works for you. And you can start with auto ads, which are the simplest ads going, but it's no good advertising it if it's not already got some sales, really, because the initial sales prove your book, prove that other people want your book.
yeah,
And if you're going to advertise a book that nobody wants, it isn't going to work for you.
yeah,
But getting started with Amazon advertising can be quite simple, quite cheap. You can start with an auto ad and let the Amazon algorithm work it all out for you. Amazon spend a lot of money developing these algorithms. They do know what they're doing. So you need the algorithm to sort of sit up and take notice. But the advertising algorithm can work it out for you, work out what words to show it against. And you probably don't people don't realize, perhaps, when they go onto Amazon, that some of the listings they're being shown are adverts. They look
yeah,
like normal listings. There's just a little tiny sponsored in the corner that you don't perhaps notice.
Yeah. So, well, I suppose there's a little bit of a chicken and egg thing, and I know I've fallen foul of this in the past. In that you got your book on Amazon, and for a lot of authors, they've done it on the cheap. They've maybe like bought a cheap like ready-made cover, or they've designed their own cover. They've got a friend to edit it for them, or something along those lines. But they know they need to invest in advertising to actually really make it sell. But how do they know that they're not backing a book that is not going to do well, that actually nobody wants, without paying the money to advertise to find out that nobody wants it? Or
Yeah.
actually, on the other case, how do they know that their efforts are just they're advertising to the wrong people and it would work? I mean, like, how do they know that they've got? Because it can cost a lot of money to advertise if you do
Mm.
it. And how do they know that it's worth the investment of advertising?
You can start off low with advertising. I mean, one thing I tell people to do is to show the cover to a person on your mobile phone.
Yeah,
So get your cover, show them on the mobile phone, and then say, what do you think that book's about? And
yeah,
if your friends can tell instantly that book's about ghost stories or that book's a children's book, or but if they can't, if they're baffled, you need to look at your cover again.
yeah.
And you need to study the other. I mean, the cover's the first thing because people click because they see your cover. So you need to study the other covers in your genre. You need to look at colours. You need to look at the fonts, whether they're, super swirly and or whether they're in blocky bits. I know that's not the technical term,
Yeah.
but I don't want to baffle people with all the technical terms. You need to look at colours. There's a lot of blue in books. I've noticed in the romance books, for example. There's a lot of cartoony kind of drawings. Um, and you need to kind of match that in a way so that people know what your book's about when they look at your cover, because that will get you the clicks on your adverts. But if you don't get any clicks, then they don't like your cover. And that won't cost you anything because you're only paying for your clicks. So that's your first hurdle, really. And
And
then
is it?
after that,
Yeah.
it's whether your clicks convert to sales. And that can be your blurb and, um, the categories you put it into.
So it's really a case of put a little bit of money and see how it reacts. Check that actually people know what your book is about in the first place.
Yeah, you can
Um,
start with £1 a day, $1 a day, but you
yeah,
need to run it for at least 2 weeks.
yeah. But I
If you
mean
don't
that's
get any impressions, then your bid isn't high enough, so you need to increase your bid.
yeah. So that's like $14 or something to start, which is hopefully most people could at least start with that. Um, how important is it in terms of having read or at least knowing about the other books in that genre and knowing what people expect from a particular genre? I mean, obviously, this is probably less true for some of the non-fiction books, but even in non-fiction, if that fishing book, like if there were 5 books on fishing that are really popular, would you advise the person to read them to try and find out like what they talk about, or is that not really relevant?
I definitely look at, even in the non-fiction world,
Yeah,
even in puzzle books and things, I do look at what other people are doing and what's in their book because I always want to improve on that. And
yeah,
so I'm thinking, how can I give the reader more? How can I make mine better than theirs? So I look
yeah.
at the bestsellers. If you can afford it, I buy some of them and see what they've included, how they've done things, how they've set the book out, what size it is, for example. You could
And
easily do that if you had a local book library, for example. You could
yeah,
go and pick up some of the books in your genre and have a good look at them, see if they're selling on Amazon.
yeah. Well, I mean, if they're available as Kindle books, then if they're in Kindle Unlimited, then you can just sign up for that and then read them all. Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah, you could do.
Um, but that is something we haven't talked about actually, because there are different formats available that you can use. You've got ebooks, so that's Kindle devices and iPhones and anywhere that's like. But that tends to be more fiction, to be honest. There is some non-fiction in Kindle.
Mhm.
Then there's paperbacks, and then there's hardbacks they've got now, and also audiobooks. So, personally, which of those formats have you used, and have you found there's different kind of techniques for each of them.
I've used all of them. I think audiobooks are very expensive and don't give
Yeah,
you a return. They certainly don't for me.
yeah,
There's a lot of people on YouTube saying they're the way to go, but I don't agree with that. It's not worked for me, but you do have to try what works for you. But audiobooks can be quite expensive to produce because you've got to pay someone to
yeah.
narrate them or you've got to profit share with them.
Or you
Hardback,
could do it yourself.
I mean, once you've created your paperback for KDP, the hardback's not so tricky because
Yeah,
it's the same interior normally. You've just got
yeah,
to slightly resize the cover. So there's no harm in doing a hardback. And in fact, it does make your paperback look better value. And it makes your ebook look better value as well. So even if you don't sell them, it's still worth doing it because it helps your listing
yeah.
and
Okay, then
makes you look more professional.
let's now let's lower people's expectations of how much money they're going to make. Yeah, by
Why
how
load
much
them?
how much money would somebody make first with an ebook, which I know is actually the most profitable, then from a paperback, and then from a hardback or audiobook? Like, what proportion of the book does the author earn in general in
God, I think
royalties?
that must depend. That must really vary by authors. I mean, you know as well as I do, there's a Facebook group called 20 Books to 50K, and they believe you have to publish 20 books to make 50K
Yeah,
a year. And that's with somebody buying one of your books each day. So if you've got 20 books and each
yeah.
one sells one a day, you're going to make 50K in a year.
Yeah. Well, I was actually trying to ask a simpler question, as in like, well, I know the answer to it, so I might as well answer it, which is
You
like
answer it.
70%, 70% for ebook. But paperback is actually a lot less because
Yeah.
they claim it's 50%, but they take out all of the printing costs and everything, don't they?
Well, it
So,
depends what price you set as well.
yeah. I mean, this is the other thing that people might not appreciate. You are totally in control of price. So, well, let's talk about pricing then. What prices do you charge for those books on the back, or your typical paper? Is it paperback the ones you mainly
Yeah.
make money out of? What kind of prices do you charge, and why did you pick those particular prices?
Okay, so I price low because I want people to not have to think about whether to
Yeah,
add my item to their shopping basket. And another thing I think about is people who are not on Prime
yeah,
sometimes want to bump up their basket to get into the free delivery amount.
yeah,
So in the US, most of my paperbacks, my popular ones are $6.99, which is very low, and in
yeah.
the UK they're $4.99, and Canada they are $8.99.
Right?
So that is pretty low. That's lower than a novel because mine are not so many pages to
Yeah,
print
yeah.
as a
That's
full
true.
blown novel. And that works well for me.
So, how much money do you make per book you sell then? Is that like
I
one
make
pound?
about 20%.
Yeah.
That's the margins I work out.
Okay. So
But
that's
I think
about
if you're doing a full blown novel, which is,
yeah.
300 pages long, then you're making a bigger percentage. Would you agree?
Well, not once you take the printing costs out. That's because like paperbacks, you do need to hike the price up if you've got like a long book because it. But I forget that your book's actually quite short, so this is probably like a totally different conversation.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is the thing to like. Also, it does actually tell you on the display, doesn't it, how much you make per copy of that particular book.
And
So
that's one of the great things about self publishing. If things are
yeah,
not working, you can change them pretty rapidly. I mean, I'm told in traditional publishing, it can take a year just to get your book out there. And you can't change things, they're beyond your control. Sometimes a trad publisher even changes the title of your book. But
yeah,
with self publishing, you can decide your own title, you can decide your own price point, and you can change it overnight. The same with your cover, you can change your
yeah,
cover if it's not working.
yeah. No, I mean, I probably need to show. I've got some my fantasy books from years ago. I might change. I think the cover's always been the problem with them, to be honest. So,
Yeah,
like,
I've upgraded some covers on mine this year.
yeah. Um, okay. Well, let's to finish off, and because I know you've got a lot of books, so can you talk through each of the books you self-published one by one, and what kind of lessons you learned? Because I guess you're not writing exactly the same sort of books you were at the beginning. So, like, how did that process work for you in terms of?
So at the beginning, I started with the low content books, which will be books you write in.
Yeah,
I found out that in America, children have to take their own composition books to school. So
Yeah.
I made composition books, and I had graphics that I'd had hand drawn for my t-shirts, and I used those on the covers. Popular things that kids like,
Yeah.
like unicorns and dinosaurs, that sort of thing. And
Oh,
then I moved into more content books. So, for example, I did gardening diaries where it would be a diary like a calendar where you could write in it, but then I would also add in pages with tips about gardening and jobs to do that month and things like that.
yeah. But are all your books under the name Alex Smart, or is that Smart Alec? Or is
No,
that
I've got other pen names.
got other pen names as well?
I
Okay.
try and pick pen names that go with the genre, really.
Yeah.
So, yeah, some of my other books are under different pen names.
And what's been the most successful selling book? I mean, it's like,
Well, the most successful is, well, can't point to it, Things to Do While You Poo on the Loo.
oh,
And
yeah,
people just love the title, and they
yeah.
like to give it as a gag gift. It's got some really good reviews on Amazon. I'm heading up for 10,000 reviews. I'm not quite there yet, but I'm hoping to get there very soon, before the end of the year. I've got
So
just over 200 reviews to go.
if you got 10,000 reviews, then presumably you've sold considerably more than 10. How many copies do you reckon you've sold of that in total?
I
Or
think I've sold about 250,000.
yes, that's pretty damn good, to be honest.
That's a lot of white elephants and stocking fillers.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
I've been very lucky.
yeah. And like, well, so I mean, the funny thing is, a lot of people would consider that to be like a bestseller, and I suppose it is. But um, how did
Amazon
you
think
like?
it's the best seller.
How did the sales go? Is it like very seasonal? Because it is. You say it's kind of a stocking filler. Is it kind of like you see a massive surge in December, and then January it's like, oh, not much. Uh,
Yeah, November. It starts to build around the end of October, and then
yeah,
November's normally 3 or 4 times a normal month, and then December's usually 10 times a normal month. So
yeah,
yes, it is. And then I do pick up the Amazon bestseller badges at that point. And Amazon start to push it as well because they know it's selling and they know it's doing well. So it starts to appear in gift guides on Amazon, things like that. I mean,
yeah,
they're basically giving you free advertising at that point. If you can get to that point where you're selling enough, the Amazon algorithm, I read in a book, Robert J. Ryan, his book says the Amazon algorithm wakes up like a sheepdog and starts rounding up sheep. And it's basically rounding up, all the
I
places
know.
to promote your book.
Yeah,
So you need to poke the algorithm, really.
Amazon is amazing if you do well. It like pushes your. I only really ever had this with the first book I ever did. This was years ago, and I mean we've used a bit of Facebook advertising. Once you get in a chart, its sales keep going for quite a while.
Yeah, it goes up.
Okay, so and like you must have a lot of books now because I kind of thought it's just maybe like the 5 or 6, but you sounds like you've. I mean, how many books have you actually self-published now? Do you know?
You'd be horrified. I've self-published about 1,200 books now, but I'd like to say that maybe half of them I've never sold a copy.
Yeah,
Some of the markets are so saturated, like the composition notebooks, and it's easy to
yeah,
publish them because you're not making the interior really. You're just using the same one over and over again. And Amazon have kind of cracked down on that now because they're
yeah,
only letting people upload a certain number of books a week.
yeah.
I didn't go
So
mad. I didn't take the mickey. I was careful because I know that Amazon's all about a good customer
yeah,
experience, and that shows in your reviews and everything. And I wanted that too, because I do take bad reviews to heart. So
yeah,
I don't like bad reviews.
yeah.
I always try and give value and make the books as good as they can be.
So those 1,200 books were a lot of them just sort of variations of those low content books. Then where you changed pictures around the pins, was it?
Yeah, I would say so. The more higher content books I've probably got, maybe 50.
Yeah, still a lot. I mean, so like, have you got some sort of semi-industrial process for doing this now, or do you just
No.
kind of?
I don't trust other people to make my content because I never know if they've stolen it from somewhere or
Yeah,
you've got
yeah,
to make your books unique to you. And so I do them myself. That's what I spend my time on. And often I do covers myself as well, depending on how complex they are.
yeah,
And then my husband checks them for me. And,
yeah,
they've got other family members that help me as well. So they might help me with word lists or the website, things like that, newsletters.
yeah. So
The
what have you
actual
got?
book creation, I do that myself.
Yeah. So what have you got? Have you got a new line of books coming out, or are you going to do how to? I'm trying to think of some non-rude title for like what this year's
I
book
can't
will be.
reveal that.
Uh,
I don't want to tell you that, Tim, because someone's going to pinch my ideas.
yeah, yeah, sat nav on the lav or something like that.
I
Oh yeah, yeah. I suppose you have got the kind of almost the patent office kind of problem. I mean, I mean, this is always funny because I remember getting into sort of online business. And everybody, nobody keeps secrets here and all the rest of it. And actually, there are a lot of people who steal stuff online, and
oh, it's
it's
terrible.
more of a problem than what it should be. But on the other hand, a lot of the time, people can say a really good idea and nobody takes any notice of it.
Yeah.
Nobody will steal it. So it's like, yeah, but yeah, I guess in your case, given your success, people probably would be, say, oh, Janice is doing it. So it's like, oh, we'll copy it. So
Well, you
anyway,
could follow me on Amazon, and then you would be the first to know when my new books come out.
oh yeah, that's exactly. So what are all your author names on? Well, all the author names you want to tell us about on Amazon that people want to follow you.
I go for so Alex Smart is my main one.
Yeah.
I've got Jan Teacher. When we
Oh,
used to be able to put keywords in as author names,
yeah.
um, I can't even remember them all. I'd have to look
Right.
at
Okay.
my.
Well, let's.
I'm mostly doing Alex Smart these days.
What have you got a website that's in a state that we can send people to?
Well, I'm just having that redone at the moment,
Yeah.
so I've got a couple of weeks and it'll be a lot more swanky and lovely looking. But
And
it's going to be alexsmartbooks.com.
oh, okay. Well, I mean, this will go onto YouTube. I'm not sure anybody's watched it live. Maybe they have. Maybe they haven't. We'll find out. It's going to YouTube. It may even, if I pull my finger out, it may even be a podcast. Might actually put this show finally onto Apple Podcasts, and people in the future can look you up and find out whatever exciting book you've got for. Have you been tempted? I'm going off topic now, but have you been tempted to do books for other times of the year? Then there's not just the stocking fillers. It's a kind
Yep,
of
yep. Seasonal books sell. Seasonal
yeah,
books sell well. I mean, I found that out with the t-shirts.
yeah,
I sell t-shirts for 4th of July and Halloween and St. Patrick's Day, and there's always another one coming along, Valentine's Day, you name it. If you look at the calendar of the year, there's
yeah,
always new events coming along, and sometimes events that are unique to that year. I mean, you can't do them if they're trademark, like the
yeah.
Olympics. You
Got the
can't do
Olympics, yeah,
because that is
yeah,
unique to them. You can't steal that. Um,
yeah,
but there's always things coming along, isn't there? There's Mardi Gras and Bonfire Night in the UK, and yeah,
yeah. It's like pumpkin spice latte season or whatever is in the US coming up
yeah.
soon. So. Anyway, it's been great to have you on the show,
Oh, thank
and
you for having me, Tim.
thanks so much for actually telling us. Like, it's nice to have somebody who talks about self-publishing who isn't selling a course on it. So that's always good to have on the show.
I
So
don't want people being ripped off because there's so much information out there that's just free, and
yeah,
it breaks my heart when somebody's parted with cold hard cash to get 100 copies printed of the book.
yeah, yeah, and they can do it on Amazon. So
If they put the effort in, yes, they can.
yeah. On that note, we will finish. And thanks so much for anybody watching live or watching in the future. And I will try and hit the right button.
This is what God requires.
I remind people that this is a telepathic, it's a mind-to-mind communication. It's not me looking at them and reading their body language.